Alright, hello all, my name is Micah Wagoner, and this video is going to be sort of an overview of the code that I made in my process of creating an LED panel. You can find the website that I created in this video description, but I'm going to be showing you how to use the code that we are sending to the Arduino. Don't be frightened, I'm going to be explaining everything and hopefully it makes sense. You don't really need to know how to code. I really explain it all. And I personally try to set up this code where it's easy to understand. You'll see what I mean in just a moment. I'm going to recommend that you pull this video up on a device with a large screen, preferably a laptop, so you can read the text easily. And as you can tell by the progress bar in the video, it's a little long. There's a lot to look at, and so we're just going to get right into it. So here we got the code. I've got it opened up in the Arduino website. So first, to get the code open, first what you're going to have to do is you have to download the Arduino program from this website, and then what we're gonna have to do is from the URL in the description, you copy and paste the code, and then we go to Sketch. Now this to make sure that the code works properly out of the box, we go down, we go up, we stay up and we hit Manage Libraries. So again, this is Sketch, Manage Libraries. Then we're gonna search. Now, in order for the LED panel to run properly, we need to make sure that the NeoPixel, so I'm going to search for NeoPixel and NeoMatrix libraries are installed. And so I already have it installed. So here we have the NeoMatrix. You're just gonna hit install, and that will install. Then the NeoPixel libraries as well. I already have those all hooked up and all good. So then we have our code set up. At least have it all copied in. But then, in order to get it onto the Arduino, I'll just make this quick and easy. You go to Tools. You look for the Arduino Nano board, because that's the one that we're using, and the processor. Depending on which Arduino you get, you may have the old bootloader, or you'll have the ATmega 328P. The one that I'm using has the 328P, not the old bootloader. So once I upload the code and there's an error, if I put the wrong bootloader, there'll be an error. So say I chose this one and there's an error, I would just flip it back to this one. Trial and error will fix it. Then you're going to go port. Now currently I don't have my Arduino hooked up, but I would go to port and I would select whichever. There will be most likely just one listed, and you just hit, it'll say COM and a number, and you just hit that, and that'll show it where to go. Then you're gonna hit upload here. Now you're gonna notice mine is gonna do some stuff. What it's doing is it's compiling, it's checking all the code, and it's gonna try and send it off. Now mine is gonna get an error because I don't have an Arduino hooked up. So don't be surprised if mine generates an error. Alright, now it's uploading. It says problem uploading the board. That's fine, we don't care, because I don't have an Arduino hooked up. But once yours uploads, it should say upload complete, and you're fine. So we're just going to start off by looking at, I have developed a flowchart for the code. Now here, by looking at it, what we see is we have all of our button text on the right side, and that goes into our button code. Pretty much on the LED panel we have 4 buttons and a switch. Now depending on which side the switch is on, the buttons will do different things. So we interpret the code we interpret the buttons as 8 different buttons. and I'll show you what I mean in a moment. The buttons initially go into the last button logic, so we figure out which was the last button pressed. And not only do we figure which was the last button pressed, but which page it was on, in relation, of course, to the switch. So if the switch is on, then it's going to be 5, 6, 7, 8. If the switch is off, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So then we take that last button and we call what code corresponds to the last button that was pressed. And that sounds sort of confusing, but I'm going to explain it here right now. So here at the top we have comments, and these should explain how or what stuff does within the code. So right at the top here we have our button texts, and that's if it's available, that's what will get fed into our buttons. Of course, if it's an option, that is. Then we can choose again. We can literally just put what text we want in this right here. Oops, daisy. Whatever text we want in here, and that will show up on the LED panel once we upload the code afterward. We've got all the button text. Then here it's a little bit different. We've got the colors on screen variable. Now I can change how much colors are on a screen for a certain a certain button, I should say. So here, if I wanted to be 4, I'd make it 4. If I want to make it 300, I'd make it 300. Well, instead, I just had 3. That's fine. Here we're just making a new last button, and I'll show what that means in just a moment. This is just for some specifics on the buttons. Now here we're making some variables. Now we can change encoding. We make variables, and this is an integer. So if you're in algebra, so you know what an integer is. Pretty much it's just a number. So we have an integer that's name is button1. Then when we initialize it, it's set at 0. But we can always change it, and we do change it very often. So we're making all these variables. Now here we're just setting up the LED matrix. It's 20 by 15. The data starts at the top. It goes to the right. It goes in rows and then zigzags. Now here we're setting up the pins on the Arduino to accept the buttons. And so we're setting pin 4 as an input using the pull-up resistor. Now that explains what a pull-up resistor is right here, but frankly, I'm not going to go through the time of explaining that right now. So here are the 4 buttons, and here's the switch. Then we're initializing the matrix, setting up the serial monitor, which we can use to troubleshoot. Now here's something important. We can set the brightness of the LED panel, the overall brightness. Now here we can set it between 255 and 0. So right now I've set it at 230. Here we're just reading the buttons. We're reading the switch. Now this is where the button and switch logic happens. Let's just read this in English. If button 1 is 0, or it's being pressed. If button 1 is being pressed and the switch state is on, then our last button is going to be button 1. We do this for each one. Now you notice it changes right here. We go back to using buttons 1, 2, 3, and 4. But this time we say if the switch state is off. Because if the switch is off or versus if it's on, we want two different codes to run. So we're just setting the virtual number, I should say. Instead of the physical button, we're setting the last virtual button that was pressed. Now down here is where the code gets called. Now here we're figuring out which buttons were pressed last. Now here we're taking that which button was pressed last and calling the code that corresponds to it. So if our last button is equal to 1, and the only way for it to be 1 is if button 1 was pressed and the switch state is on. So if the last button is 1, then we're calling the button 1A code. If the last button was 2, 3, 4, 5, now here we start changing it to B's instead of A's. The A's and B's, sort of thinking about the pages. And we also have a no button code. This is how it starts up. So when you just first plug it in, what is outputted, and I'll show you that in a moment. Now here we can, if we can head over as denoted right here, what we can do is we can head to Tools and Serial Monitor. Of course, I don't have anything plugged in, so that's not going to work. Tools, Serial Monitor, and what it's going to do is it's going to list out which was the last button pressed. So we can see if something's not happening, we can look at this last button. It'll show us directly what it thinks the last button pressed was. So here's where we start making the code, or making. So when button 1 is pressed on the first page, button 1A code is called. Now this is button 1A code. So when it says if last button is equal to 1, then it's going to run all of what's inside these brackets right here. So first thing that's happening, and you'll see this very often, the first thing that's happening is we're clearing the matrix. We're clearing anything that's on there right now. And this, what we have set up for button number 1 is a rainbow sort of looking thing. Now this is a bunch of math that I haven't dived deep into, but here's what I know. The text color, we can set the text color by using, if I go to a browser and I search for a color picker, as I have already, I can choose a color. Now if it would load. My computer's running a lot right now, so it's going to take a little bit. It's being very slow today. I can choose a color that I like. Now usually what I'd do is I'd say R, G, and B, and put those values right in here as R, G, and B. But the way that we have this configured, of course, RGB is red, green, and blue. So we're taking the values between 0 and 255 and putting them in right here. So it knows what color to make this. But thing is, this way it's set up where it's green, red, blue. Now this, it says it right here. We're going to put the green, red, and blue values. So instead, if we wanted this color, instead of doing 239, 125, and 2, we do 125, 239, and 2. Just something important to note. Now this makes the text sort of scroll and keep scrolling. Now this is making a reference back to what we set up at the top, whereas so this is button text 1A. We go up here, button text 1A is blank currently, so if we put something in here, it would take that and put it right here, and we're seeing it's printing that. Now, if we deleted this matrix.show, nothing would happen. We have to have this show command right here in order for anything to go on the thing. Now here we have, that was button 1A code, as you can see right here. This is button 1B code. Again, we're clearing the matrix. Now this is something new. This is something that this is what makes it really customizable. What we can do is we can draw shapes. So here I've drawn a rectangle starting at point 0, 0 and going 20 over the x-axis and 15 over the y-axis, and using the color of 239, 69, 131. Now there's a whole document that I found online for this that explains it perfectly, and I have it here right now. So this is like a 20-page document that just outlines or how to do this. But you would think, now you would think that 0, 0 would be at the bottom left, but 0, 0 is at the top left, or left. So that's something to keep in mind. It's still in the XY configuration. I think of this as the change in X, the change in Y. So we're going 20 over and 15 over. Now here we're starting at point 2, 2, and we're going 16 over, and we're going 11 over. And this is sort of like a Taco Bell looking color scheme. And then of course we have to show it. Now this is button 2A code. I believe, yep, this is the American flag using those shapes. Now here we can use the fill screen. So for each shape we can either draw the rectangle or fill the rectangle. Now in this case we had it draw, but right here we have a fill. Now that'll just do an outline versus, so draw a shape will do an outline, but fill the shape will fill it all the way up. Now, yeah, this is the American flag. Now here's one we can fill the screen with the color, and that just requires, since it's filling the whole thing, it just requires this. Now we got to keep in mind that each sequential command will override the other. So that for this one, to save some time and save some commands, what I did is I just filled the whole screen with red. Then I added the white stripes, alternating in spots. Then I added the blue corner. So the blue corner is at the top. But the stripes are still there. They're just buried beneath. Then we show it, of course. Another rainbow. We went over that. Now this one doesn't have the text in here. I believe this is a rainbow that it doesn't bear resemblance to a rainbow, but it looks really cool. Another rainbow, this time with actual text. Ooh, this is something I need to fix. This should be button 3A. Button text 3A. I'm gonna go up and make sure that that's actually there. This is something that I did not catch on to. There we go. Button text 3A. There we go. Now it's pointing in the right direction. These changes will be put up there, so don't worry. This stuff has been fixed. Button 3B code. Here I believe we are. This is the 6 dots there going all across the matrix. And here we're clearing it again, and then we're using a variable. Now let's read this logically. If r, which is a variable that we made, is over 520, then r is going to be reset to 0. Otherwise, if it's below 520. Now this is an interesting thing right here. This means every couple of milliseconds, 1 will be added onto this variable. So pretty much what this is doing is we're saying if this variable is below what we want it to be, go ahead, keep adding, but as soon as it passes that mark, then we're going to start over again. So it's just go boop, 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 boop. It's just go over and over again. And that's what we're using to set the ID. Now here we're multiplying and adding, subtracting onto the number, so we have a little bit of variation. Again, we show it. Button 4A code, we're almost done with the code. We're almost there. Again, we're clearing it. We're drawing the rectangle. Starting at 0, 0, going 20 over, and then 15 over. And we're adding text. This is the house little looking thing. Again, we clear it. This time we fill the screen with a blue sky. I commented here. This is the grass. This is the house, the base of the house. This is the window. This is the roof. Now this is something I hadn't used before. This is a triangle. This requires an extra variable. I don't remember what it was at the moment, but it is on that matrix GFX library that I showed earlier. It shows all the variables, what we use. I'm pretty certain that this is the first. So the coordinates of the first point, the coordinates of the second point, and the coordinates of the third point are all right here. And we set the color. Alright, that was the last button, but here's what this is where we declare the no button code. So if no buttons have been pressed, you just started it up, this is what's going to show. And it's just a standard rainbow. So now I'm going to go back over here, and we're going to read this again. If the button 1 is equal to 0, and the switch state is 1, it is on, then last button is 1. So say last button is 1, then we're going to call that button 1A code right here, and that's what gets shown. Now this switch state really does dictate whether or not or which buttons get called. And yeah, I believe that is about it. Now these are where the libraries are getting called, and here we're importing the Neo Matrix, the GFX libraries. There's some more GFX stuff. You can actually use fonts. And that's another thing covered by that PDF there that I found. Neo Matrix. Now this is important. This is where the pin for the Arduino is. Remember, this gets called right here, so we just hit it right up here for convenience, and then it's put right down here. Easy as that. Now this is where we're talking about where the GRB. So instead of being RGB as most common, it's GRB. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, that's about it for the code. Again, this PDF is very helpful in explaining stuff. And just here, it's showing a graph of a coordinate grid and showing which coordinates go to which, and it's very helpful in getting what you want to happen. And that's about it for the code overview. I hope you liked it and found it useful. Yeah, and these comments are there everywhere to guide you, and so you can figure out what this does if I didn't explain something well enough. Yep, that's about it. Thank you for watching. I'll put up this flowchart again. Again, we feed the text in, and we can take the buttons in, figure out it's computed with the page switch, and then we call the last button code, and then that gets fed to the panel. Yep, that's about it, and yeah, thank you for watching this video.